Hello and welcome to On the Irregular with me, Java Beret, a podcast where I chat to women from all walks of life about their own unique creative journey, how they got here, how their story has shaped their creative work, what they've learned, what has helped them, and where they plan to go from here. It's an irregular journey for so many of us, and I'm delighted to offer a platform to share these fascinating stories and wells of wisdom. In this episode, I chat to Annie Ridout, journalist, author, poet, and founder of the business community for women, the Robora. When I listened back to this conversation, recorded in July, I realised that Annie is such a natural coach that I'd accidentally ended up talking more about myself than I usually would. Thankfully, I managed to shut up long enough for Annie to find the space to talk to me about her varied career, starting from a very young age washing cars, passing through nightclubs in her early 20s and internships at newspapers, to where she is now. We also talked about the idea of all art as connection, her book Shy, where she explores the value in being the quiet person in the room, and what it was like to go viral with her poetry. Welcome to my very chatty chat with the endlessly lovely and fast-thinking Annie Ridout. Warning, this episode contains swearing. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Hiya. Good. How are you, Annie?
I'm good. I'm in a car park, so I hope the sound is okay. Also out in the sticks.
Yeah, it sounds absolutely fine.
Oh, good.
Brilliant. What are you doing in a car park?
Oh, hiding from my family.
Oh, brilliant. I've had a few from cars. I think one woman in South Africa, we did a chat with her in her van parked outside her house.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I love all the different places. There was one on a Mexican balcony.
Oh,
lovely. Yeah, I love the variety. Oh, thank you so much for giving me your time. I know how busy
thank
you
you.
are. It really means a lot. And I'm really looking forward to talking to you because I came across you about 6 years ago. I think it was when Griffin had just been born and you just launched the online magazine, The Early Hour.
Yeah.
And I would read it religiously, in the morning in the early feeds.
Yeah.
And I was just really intrigued by it. I loved your writing and how you approached it. So I've followed you over the years and it's been so interesting. And now, of course, I know your sister Lauren, who's on last season's podcast. So I had a look through your extensive CV.
I think I went a bit over the top. Afterwards, I was like, maybe she meant like sort of recent,
No. I found it absolutely fascinating because I loved that you gave me like your earliest job. What was it when you were 9, washing the car? It's like that is a pure entrepreneurial mind working there. That's when I started figuring out how to make money, and then it's all led to here.
Well, I think I remember doing eBay as a teenager when eBay had just launched. And I started selling stuff. And I remember my dad being quite excited by it because he runs his own business and he's very entrepreneurial. And I sort of didn't quite know why he was so excited. I was like, I'm just making money. This is what you do to make money. You learn about these new things. But now that I am sort of running a proper business, I can see that those early experiences are really important and do inform kind of where you get to down the line.
Definitely, because there was something I was listening to one of your podcast episodes this morning, and I think it was about, you were talking about how you've been having a rough day, like filming a webinar, and you really weren't enjoying it. And then eventually you said, I channeled my inner waitress, put on a smile, and I did it. And I thought, that's the value in all of the other jobs. Those tiny things that you just feed into the bigger stuff that maybe is more what you want to be doing. But, it's so valuable to have those other experiences.
Yes, it's so true. That customer service thing of being sort of young and having to learn that if you're in a bad mood, you can't take that into work in the restaurant or whatever you're doing. You've got to smile. And it's a good life skill, isn't it? To just pretend everything's fine at work, even when it isn't.
Yeah, unfortunately, it is actually a really good skill.
I wonder if the conversation's changing slightly. In fact, I know a female scientist, and she said she sometimes wants to cry at work when things go wrong. She gets really frustrated and she wants to cry. And we were talking about this a few years ago, and she said there's just no space for emotions in the science world. In the lab. And actually over the past few years, she says it's really changed. And now people are becoming more open to emotions and to everything not being fine all the time and not having to be strong and resilient sometimes.
You grew up in London.
Yeah.
and your dad ran his own opticians, didn't he?
Yes.
And do you remember like your earliest memory of what you were interested in? Did you have any idea of like, I want to be that, or I want to do that?
I wanted to be a teacher. So there, I remember being in the first house that I lived in. I remember having like dad had brought home some glasses without lenses in. So I'd put them on and I'd get my books and then make my little brother be my student, my only student. And I'd pretend to read. I don't know if I could read. I was quite young. And so teacher, I think that was always the role play thing. Also like running a hotel, shops.
Yes.
But teachers kind of stuck. And as I got older, my mum always said she imagined I'd be a teacher, that I'd live in the countryside and be a teacher. And I was like, no, I'm going to be a journalist and live in London. And now I'm living in the countryside and I am a teacher through online courses. So not traditionally sort of in a school, but I do teach.
I love that, how so many people I've spoken to, they've had that, like they have found themselves at exactly where they wanted to be when they were like 5 years old.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it?
Staggering. Yeah.
And I think it's not always in the way that you imagine. As a child, I was imagining I would be a teacher up at the front of a classroom with 30 children, and that was like the dream. And now it's very much, it's all online, and I don't even really call myself a teacher, but I had this astrology reading recently, and she said to me, this next stage of your life is all about teaching. You're going to be working with women, you're going to be teaching. And I was like, no, I'm not. I'm a writer. That's what I did. But actually the teaching is always there, even in my writing, I suppose.
Cool. Yeah, because that you share so much information and so much experience. I learn something from everything that I read of yours, even as just like personal experience. You know, it's like you say, it's not, we have this idea of teaching as this kind of didactic way of imparting information, but it's so much richer and broader than that. The way you approach it. And so through then, like going through school, which way did you kind of veer? Was it towards, because you studied English at uni, didn't you?
Yes.
And was that kind of a clear path through school?
Not really. I was more I don't know. I think I sort of wonder now, as I have my own children going through, 2 of them are at school and one's just 3. And I look at them and the things that they seem to find easy and the things they struggle with. And I'm trying to remember what it was like for me. And one of my children is dyslexic, and I definitely wasn't dyslexic, but I was quite slow at learning. I wasn't very sharp, and I didn't find learning very easy. But I worked hard and I had a lot of support at home. And so I always got on fine and I did quite well. And then when I really pushed myself, I could do very well, but it took so much hard work. Nothing came naturally. And so I think, I don't know if I'm academic or not, because I had all this support and was pushed in that direction. But actually my first sort of love was performing. I loved playing the piano and writing music and singing, and I still do. And I applied originally to study performing arts or dance or drama at uni. And I got a few offers, did all the auditions and got a few offers, and then panicked and applied to do creative writing at Liverpool. And I started that degree, but then I dropped out because I had a boyfriend in London who I was missing. And I think maybe it was a bit too far away at that point from London. And so I went back, and then I moved to Brighton to live with my sister, Lauren, who was having this very fun life. And I shared her room and her bed for about 6 months before, and was a waitress actually at Wagamama. And then I decided to go to university because that's what she was doing and all her friends were doing it. And I was like, I think that's more fun than being a waitress at this stage. So I applied to Sussex, and I didn't have the grades to get in to do English. They wanted 2 A's and a B, and I had 2 A's and a D. So they said no, that I didn't get in. And then my mom was like, just phone them, email them, tell them, that you really want to go, show that you're keen. So I did. And then I had the course director phone me up and say, why did you get a D in music? And I said, because I got an A in performance, but I hated the theory, and I got an F in theory. And that dragged my grade down to a D. And I explained it to him, and we had a chat about writing, and I'd been traveling and was speaking about that. And then he gave me a place. So that's how I came to do English.
Wow, that really proves that if you kind of take the step to make a personal connection in a situation, it can open something up that you thought was closed.
Absolutely. And it's interesting how, because that was like, particularly my mum, she's always, you don't take no for an answer. If you want it, you keep going. And my whole career is about, there's so much rejection. And Rich, my husband, who is a filmmaker, and I talk about this, and the fact that the people who succeed are the people who just keep going, and it's relentless. Like, I've been pitching a book for 2 years, and there's now a bit of like attention around it and possible agent, but I've been pitching it, and it's a yes, and then it's a no, and then it's a maybe, and then it just like, they just disappear, and then it can't, it's like, it's so relentless. But if you want it, you just have to keep pushing. And often the things that we think are a definite no, like a friend recently went for a job interview and she didn't get it. And she was like, so that's it. But no one got the job. So they're just going to open the applications again. I said, are you going to apply again? She was like, oh, no, I can't. I've already applied for it. And I was like, no, you absolutely can. You can. And you can go in with a different pitch.
Wow. Yeah. It's interesting that what you just described kind of in a way, I feel like it mirrors a little bit what you were talking about, like going through school. Like, you're like, I'm not sure if I'm academic, but I had a lot of support, and it sounds like you persevered. You just kept going, and I think that's a very particular skill that a lot of people don't have.
Do you know what? I think it comes from being quite mediocre across the board. Like, I have this theory. I have a theory that girls who are really, really pretty don't have to develop so much of a personality, and they will be liked and popular. And then as they get older, life becomes a bit harder because they can't always rely on their looks in the same way. Whereas if you are quite plain, as I was as a child, you have to develop a personality and you have to work really hard. And it's like, those are sort of like, well, personality is it just forms, but to work hard is a life skill that you then take with you, and you understand nothing will fall into my lap. And so I just have to work hard at everything, and it becomes the norm.
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking to somebody the other day about this, about how she she was born in 1962, so she's a bit older. She'll be 60 this year. And she was saying that her parents never told her that she was great at anything. If she wanted to do something, she just did it. And if she wasn't very good, she just persevered with it. And it meant that she ended up doing things that she wasn't necessarily naturally good at, but she really enjoyed. And she just kept on going with them. And it was more about the experience than about excelling at it.
Oh, that's so interesting. And did she feel comfortable with not having her parents tell her that she was amazing?
Yeah, she said that it was just, she kind of was like saying it was the time you didn't get told, because she was comparing it to now. She was saying, I just see these parents talking to their kids saying, oh, you're amazing, darling, you're amazing, you're wonderful. And she said, and to be honest, often they're not, And the problem is that then they get a shock when the rest of the world doesn't think that they're incredible. And, and it's all subjective, especially in terms of creativity. But I just thought that was quite interesting, actually. Yeah. If you don't put emphasis on whether you're good at something or not, it's like, okay, do you enjoy this? Is this something that you enjoy exploring? Then just explore it and live it, and don't think about where you think that you need to be. And it kind of blew my mind a little bit, because I feel like I've always grown up like, well, unless I'm absolutely amazing at it, what's the point? Which is such a precious attitude, and there's a lot of ego tied up in that.
Yeah.
And I think,
do you know, I was thinking on the way to the car park that I'm now sat in, I was thinking about this. I love making music, and I yesterday was at this guy's house, and he makes hang drums. And the hang drum has been on my vision board forever. Like, I borrowed one like 15 years ago, and I loved it, and made some music and recorded some stuff. And then I've never had one since. They're really expensive. They're really hard to get hold of. But this guy is making them, and they're more affordable, still quite expensive. Yeah. But I was driving, and I was like, what I want is to buy a hang drum, then I want to make music, and then I want to share it online. And then I was like, oh no, I can't do that, because I'm not I'm not a musician in the traditional sense. It's not the thing that I do, and I'm too old. And then I was like, hold on a minute. That's such a ridiculous thing to say. And actually, my new motto in my head that I just came up with earlier is that if you can do it, you can do it.
Yeah.
And if you can literally physically play a hang drum, then you can play a bloody hang drum.
Yeah. I know, it's so simple, but my God, the hurdles that you have to get over to get to that idea.
Yeah.
And permission, giving yourself permission to do it.
Yeah. But I think it is hard. It's hard with social media as well, because the idea that, because if we just do things that we enjoy, no matter whether we're good at them or not, there's always this feeling that we could be sharing what we're doing.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, where you sort of sometimes think, but like, is this good enough for me to share it online? Is it a bit shameful to share this shit drawing I've done? Even if I enjoyed it.
I know what you mean, and I guess it's in a way something that we need to divorce ourselves from in some ways, and it's like, you don't need to share everything. And I am such an oversharer. I share fucking everything. Yeah. You know, and sometimes I do just say, why? What do I want from that? Like, why do I have to share it? Why can I not just have this? I used to, before social media, I just did it, and it would just be on my desk, and it would sit there, and I did it for the pure joy of it. You know, is it an endorphin here? I don't know what it is. And it's something I question quite often. It's just like, it can just be what it is.
But then there's that idea that like all art is about connection. And that book that actually Laura, my sister, gave me by Lewis Hyde, The Gift, which is all about how you must share your art with other people, because that is what it's for. It's to connect with other people. And so in some ways, that's like a really old school idea.
That's the point.
Social media makes it possible, but I totally agree that we all should also be able to just enjoy the process and have something and not have to share absolutely everything that we do.
I mean, I remember there was one day, and I think it was Elwyn, one of my kids was really little, like a baby, and I just did this scribble drawing of myself with messy hair and a boob hanging out of my bra and my belly hanging over my sweatpants, and I shared it on Instagram, and it was just saying something like, oh, I should be drawing more, and you replied and just went, yeah, you should.
Oh, really? I like the sound of that drawing. It's right up my street.
And it just stuck with me. I was like, yeah, like it was just so simple. It's like, yeah, I should. Like, what's your problem, Java? Just do it. And I did, and I carried on, and then it took me down a path that I'm kind of now on. But, you know, and it was amalgamation of a few different things, but like that moment really stood out, and like very simple, kind of what you just said. If you can do it, you can do it.
Yes.
So,
but you definitely can draw very well.
Thank you. And by sharing it, you know, I guess then I opened up the possibility of somebody sharing their thoughts on it. So there's something on either side, isn't there? There's like, you can have stuff that you don't have to share, but also if you do share, like you said, it's a way of connecting.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so back to your colourful career. So I mean, there's just so much packed in. Like, so I was like, I kept on like reading, because you wrote, you know, your job titles, and then next to it your age, and I was like, Jesus.
Yeah, like, you'll see some didn't last very long.
So she's only 22. She's already quite you kind of did quite a bit of stuff on music scene, and then with art galleries, but then also doing internships at newspapers, and like that's a lot. Like, how did you do the side jobs to help fund you financially to be able to do internships? Because I know that's a real issue with internships, is the privilege to be able to afford to do them.
So I was very fortunate that my parents lived in London, so I had a base, and I could live with them rent free. So that is definitely a huge privilege. And all the internships I did one at ITN and the Times and the Independent, they were all London based. And then I would work different jobs. Yeah, I'd do like market research, going into bars and getting people to fill out surveys, and it paid so well. So that was evening work, and I'd get like 150 or 200 pounds a night in my like early 20s, which was amazing. I mean, it's still good money now for such easy work. But it was quite exposing. I had to go, and it was all about cigarettes and alcohol, which is a bit shameful. But I would go and ask people about what cigarettes they smoked and ask them all these questions. And it was like quite annoying for people that I was approaching them and asking them to fill out these surveys, but they'd get like a free lighter. So I would do that job, and then I worked on the door of a nightclub in Camden on a Saturday. But then, that one didn't pay very well. So by the time I'd finished work at 1 a.m. and then gone out and met my friends and got really drunk, I'd have spent most of the money. Yeah, so I had to cobble together a few jobs, but I wasn't paying rent. So that is how I could do all those internships, really.
Yeah, it's a huge factor, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And by this point, so because you had done English, and had you done your MA by this point, or?
So I did an English BA, and then I came back to London and worked and I actually did a TEFL course, teaching English as a foreign language, because I was going to travel. I did that actually, and then I got a job at the place I'd done the training, and I did that for a few months until I met this woman who, funnily enough, full circle, introduced me to the hang drum, and she was running a music label, and and one of her people on the books was a hang drum player. So I was doing the English teaching, but then she sort of seduced me with this exciting job on her record label, and she was like, "Do you want to come to Barcelona?" So I said, okay. And I just quit my job, my quite good teaching job I was doing in town. And I went to Barcelona with her. And then I sort of started working with her. And
what year would that have been?
That was probably 2009.
Oh, okay. Because I grew up in Barcelona. So I was wondering if you'd
really?
crossed paths. But I would have been in Manchester at that point. Well, I bet you had a brilliant time.
That was very fun, but short-lived. And then I started my master's. It was all a bit last minute. At the sort of end of the summer, I was like, I think I need to study journalism. I'd done these internships. It wasn't leading to a job. So I thought I'd either do an NCTJ or a master's. And I did the master's and got applied and got on. I think there must have had some spaces left. And so I just got on and started the next month.
And having already had experience working on newspapers, did you gain what you hoped to gain from the masters?
It's a really good question. I would say you definitely do not need a master's in journalism to do it. Yeah, no, it was fun. I met one of my really close friends I met on that course. I had fun. It was the beginning. It was a print and online journalism course, and it was the beginning of online journalism. Only two people, me and the friend actually I'm still in contact with, Emma, we were the only two people who had a blog, who had our own website and were doing writing in that way. If you think about what people are doing now, social media wasn't a thing. Facebook had started, but Instagram hadn't. Maybe Twitter had. And so it was a completely different time, and I think we did start to learn more about the online side, whereas all my interning at ITN, it was broadcast, but at the others, it was print. It was all print journalism. They barely had websites back then. Wow. Which is mad, isn't it? So in that respect, it helped to bring my understanding of journalism into the world that we're now in, I suppose, and encouraged me to keep going with my blog, and which I did, and that grew. And then I started another one. And so I think it did lead me into the online world that I'm now very much still in a bigger way. But for anyone who wants to get into journalism, I'd say don't bother, and just go and do work experience, internships, or just pitch to, actually don't do that. Just pitch to write articles, come up with a really good idea and pitch it to a newspaper, something with a news angle, and you'll probably get commissioned, and that will be the start, and you'll be paid. You won't have to do any unpaid work. Simple as that.
Yes, that's simple. But that's really interesting, because I think that's something that I'm really interested in exploring. Is, of course, there is so much value in education, and but I think that there are different ways of going about it. There are different courses and there are different ways, and we don't have to fit to the formal degree model or masters.
I guess it gives you confidence, doesn't it? Education gives you the confidence to think well, I've done an English degree, so I can apply to be a writer on whatever this job is. Maybe if you didn't have the degree, I don't know, because I wasn't in that position, but I imagine you might just question yourself a little bit more. I think the more sort of certificates you have, the more, in some ways, the more qualified you feel. But actually, with journalism, the most important thing is, I think, to just develop a niche. So whatever your subject is, your area, whatever your like life experience is at that time, or whatever subject you're focusing on, if you really niche down, then you become a kind of a voice in that, on that subject. And that's what people want. They want someone to write about motherhood who is in the motherhood world in some way.
Because that really kind of became like with the early hour and the freelance mom, that was very much your niche, wasn't it?
Yeah, it kind of, and funnily enough, I was interviewed before I had children. I don't even know why I was interviewed. I don't know what I was doing then, but someone had me on their radio show talking about feminist stuff. And I was pregnant, and she said, "Do you think your journalism will change after you have a baby? Will it become more about parenting?" And I was like, "No, obviously not. I write about women's issues, and it will be really like serious feminist stuff." And then as soon as I had my daughter, it all became about parenting, because that was the world I was in. And then I launched the early hour, and that led to me writing for the Guardian about parenting, and then eventually to a book deal to write The Freelance Mum.
And you were only 32 when you wrote The Freelance Mum?
Oh, I don't know. Did I write that?
That's what your CV says, yeah.
And I must have worked it out to write my list of things I've done. Yeah.
I feel like you have a very fast mind that figures out very quickly where you're going, what you want to be doing, but it is very flexible, and you kind of like pivot quite quickly. But like just looking through everything that you've done and like the way that you talk, I feel like you get places very quickly. And I guess, I see this as well, like, you from a very young age, you were kind of like I guess what we were saying earlier, like persevering, just going with it, but very focused.
I feel I rush. I'm very impatient. And if I want something, in fact, my dad said this in his speech at my wedding, when Annie wants something, she will not stop until she gets it. I remember the only time he got angry with me as a teenager, once he got angry, and it's because I was so relentless in my pursuit of whatever the thing was that I wanted. And at that stage, I wanted to go to the pub. I think I was like 13 or 14. I was like, I want to go to the pub. They said no. I was like, I want to go to the pub. I want to go to the pub. I want to go to the pub. On and on and on and on, until he like roared me out of the sitting room because I was so fucking annoying. and then I carried on. When I wanted to ride a bike, I was just like, no one taught me. I don't think. I just said, "Dad, take the stabilizers off the bike." And he was like, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Yeah." And he took them off, and I just rode up the gut. I was just determined to do this. I probably was quite old, or like doing it after everyone, but once I decided I was going to do it. In fact, I think I'm always a bit sort of behind, but maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's being second born. I'm always behind, and I'm always trying to catch up. So maybe I've only just had this realization. Maybe I'm always rushing to catch up.
That's funny, because as you were saying that, I was thinking, this reminds me of Elwyn, our youngest.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yeah, that kind of just like dogged, like, right, okay, well, I better go on with it then and just do it.
Yeah. I guess it's seeing your older sibling sort of accomplish things before you all the time. So you're just like, oh, for God's sake, I just need to ride a bike because Lauren's been riding one for 2 years. And I think also it's being a summer baby, and I was always the last to turn whatever age, and to get my driving license and to be allowed to go to the pub, to have the ID.
I really do think that like so much of our behaviour and is from when we're really little. It forms so quickly. I think by the time you're 5, you really have a strong sense of self.
Yes.
And I think from then onwards, you're struggling to not be veered away from that.
Yeah.
Because I look at my 2 who are 3 and 6, and from the moment were born, like they have known who they are, and I've known who they are, and they have exactly the same parents, but their nature is so individual and they're so different, and they've gravitated to different toys. They have different ways of being affectionate, different interests, and I really hope that we can just help kind of encourage them with that, because I look back at when I was 5, and I've always been quite kind of very, very sensitive and very curious, but I always knew that I wanted to draw and I wanted to write and I wanted to tell stories. I wanted to tell stories, and I
Yeah.
did that in lots of different ways, whether it was like making little scenarios with little bits and pieces, or drawing things, or writing my own newspaper or things like that. And then I kind of lost confidence and looked outwards and thought, oh, well, I can't see other people doing things in the way that I do, so maybe that means that it's of no value.
Yeah.
And my mum was always incredibly encouraging, but I was just full of self-doubt and ended up going off and doing lots of other things that I found interesting and I've loved. But I find it interesting that I'm now, in my late 30s, and I've kind of, over the past 5 years, I've come back full circle to doing the things that I loved doing when I was a kid. It was like making little people out of corks and drawing things.
But has having children taken you back, like sort of reminded you of your own childhood and taken you back there?
I don't think, because I'm rubbish at play. I'm really rubbish at playing with kids. I'll play with stuff that I love, but I'm rubbish at playing with them. I think what it's done is it's made me mine my past. I've really dug deep because I was like, right, well, what am I going to do? I need to really figure out what it is that I want to do. And so just was like, I'm just going to write down all of the things that I love doing. And so I just dug deep, and it took me right back to those things. It's like, well, I still love doing those things. And just because it's creative play doesn't mean that I can't, create something like a job out of it, essentially. And that, it's just going back to, like, we were talking about behaviors and about how you're relating it back to being the second born and a summer baby. All of these things, they're like the core of us, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we see them manifest in different ways throughout our life as we grow older, and how they develop. And
what we have to do, and this, so my last book, Shy, was all about kind of nurturing the shy child in you, or the shy person that you still might be, and not thinking that you have to sort of snap out of it or overcome it as you get older, but instead like acknowledging your shyness and seeing it as completely fine, and for other people who aren't shy to accept it of people who are. And to not expect sort of chattiness all the time from someone who just doesn't feel very chatty.
Yeah, no, I really love that. I really love that approach to it. I think it's so much more, I guess, recognizing that every single person in a community is of value and can bring something. And because if everyone's loud and confident and chatty,
it's exhausting. I love shy people. I particularly love shy children. They're always like the sweetest children. Obviously, not only one of my children is shy, and I love them all for their different ways. And the chattiness can be very funny and endearing as well. But there's something about shy children that I find I just love. Yeah. So we need them all. We need everything, everyone.
And it's interesting that you describe yourself as shy, because I can imagine that from the outside and just talking to you, it's not a word that I would instantly describe you as, because you seem quite comfortable in front of a camera and sharing experiences, and you are very chatty. Is it internal, or do you kind of sometimes are you the quiet person in the room?
I think probably most people, because I've moved to a completely new area recently and I'm making all these new friends, I think they would be surprised to hear that I would describe myself as shy. But I think it's, for one, I think that people don't always realize you can be shy and confident. So you can be shy but feel confident at home on your own to talk into your phone and do Instagram stories. Like Victoria Hargreaves, who is on Instagram with shitloads of followers, and I met her and she came around and she was like, I'm really shy, but I can do the talking into my phone thing. And her whole thing is like performing in leotards and like shaking her bum in the air, and she seems so confident, but she's shy. And so I think there's a bit of I think that we often, or I used to think, and a lot of people still think, that if you're shy you're not confident, and that's not quite right. And actually, like, a shy child can be showing how confident they are by hanging back rather than participating at a party or in the playground. And I've been learning all this stuff as I was researching my book, and after publishing I've learned even more. And so I think I do feel shy. There are people, I've also realized I'm more introverted than I ever thought. I thought I was a shy extrovert because I love parties and I love chatting and I love like festivals and markets and busy places and being around lots of people. But actually, I also get so drained by certain types of people. So by certain people, like by some people who are very extroverted and very chatty and want to be around people all the time, that exhausts me. And actually, Lauren, my sister, doesn't exhaust me at all, because I can be very honest with her, but she's a complete extrovert and would be surrounded by people all the time. And we're quite different in that respect. We're very, like, we get on so well, and we're very similar in many ways with our kind of interests. And but she will happily sort of have people like living in her house, staying in her house, always around, dropping in for dinner and stuff, whereas I really need some time alone to recharge. So I'll go to the party and I'll dance into the early hours, but then I've got to go home alone and sleep and wake up and not have anyone that I have to talk to. So but that's more introversion. Shy, I think I feel shy in new situations, but I've sort of learned tools to help me cope with making new friends, like making some kind of online contact first. So when I moved, my daughter really wanted to make friends. I was quite happy to have a bit of a quiet life for a while, but my daughter is a massive extrovert. She's just like my sister, and she was like, I was homeschooling as well, so she just was desperate to meet some girls her age. So I put a thing in a parenting group on Facebook in my new area saying, has anyone got a daughter who's 7 years old? My daughter wants to make friends. And all these lovely people like, I have, we can meet in the park. And we ended up going for tea at someone's house. And then when my daughter went back to school, started a new school, she happened to be in a class with this girl. So we started making these connections. But it was much easier to start these relationships online and to have a chat online and to get to know people a bit and then to meet up, a bit like online dating, I suppose. Yeah. Put the feelers out rather than having to approach someone in person. That can be quite intimidating.
Yeah, definitely. I think when we first moved here, I hadn't really made contact with anyone online at all, and this was about 5 years ago, and I had Griffin and he was 1, and I'd just walk up to people in the park.
Oh, you would? Oh wow, that's amazing. I'm impressed.
I was on such a mission, and I was so lonely. I was just like the friendliest, probably quite annoying parent at the park. Like, someone be my friend, please.
Do you know what though, I remember when I had Joni, my first, I remember pushing a buggy around a park, and she was probably 6 months or something, and I felt so lonely. None of my friends had had babies. I was in London, but I was living at my parents' house for a bit, and I was pushing around the park, and I remember seeing a group of mums having a picnic, and I was just so jealous because I had some NCT friends, but they weren't great. We're not friends anymore. It was like a temporary thing, and they weren't where I was staying. They were in another part of London. And I remember thinking, I wish I had the confidence to just go over and say, can I sit with you? And I'm sure they would have been completely fine about that. But you would have done it.
I don't know. A group is quite intimidating. That is quite, because then they're like a gang.
Okay, so it's individual people.
Definitely individual people. Someone who looked vulnerable.
Yeah. I mean, they were probably really grateful that you did. They were probably feeling as you were.
Possibly, but it's so hard. It's like, because I was talking to I think on season 2 I was talking to Nadia Karim, who's a life coach, and we were talking about the value of being quiet, and kind of like similar, because she was saying, I'm not a particularly chatty person, and that's not where my strength is. My strength lies in other areas. And we were talking about similar things to this, about you kind of develop mechanisms, but it's also about kind of acknowledging that it is totally fine to be the quiet person in the room. And like, it's not just fine, it's like, that's who you are, and that's wonderful.
And also it's very endearing when you have the person who sort of is quiet and asks questions and listens. That's a lovely person to be in conversation with.
Definitely not someone who's just waiting for their turn to talk.
Exactly.
Actually, present with you. No, it's very true. It's very true. This episode is sponsored by Fly Me to the Bloom. Fly Me to the Bloom is a space where photographer Maria Murray has created a range of luxury gifts for nature and flower lovers, from jigsaw puzzles to beautifully framed giclée prints. Maria finds beauty in the imperfections, the interplay of light and shadow, the muted and the bold. She grows many of her own flowers and is inspired by taking the process from seed to print. Caring for the environment is part of Maria's process. She only works with framers who are carbon neutral and supply real wood frames with high quality glass. All the floral prints are on fine art bamboo paper made 90% from bamboo fibres and 10% cotton. Every detail is thought through carefully to create exquisite, timeless pieces to bring floral joy into your home and the homes of the ones you love. You can find Fly Me to the Bloom online at flymetothe.bloom.co.uk and on Instagram at flymetothebloom. And so then I wanted to talk to you as well about your illustrations and your poetry, because that's a whole other part of your creativity and work as well. Because like you wrote a couple of poems that went viral, didn't you? Like what I Want, and tell me a bit more about that if you like.
So the first one I wrote was I've Just Had a Baby, and it was about like not expecting. I've just had a baby, don't expect too much of me. I can't remember it now off the top of my head, but I guess it struck a chord with other new mums who felt they just wanted a bit more kindness and a bit less judgment, and just to be seen as doing this really important role that it often feels people don't see it as an important role, but actually you've had a baby and it's your whole life has like massively changed, and your body is different, and you can't go out with your friends as easily as you used to be, and all these things. So that one went viral, and that was quite exciting. And then it got that annoying thing happen where people started, well, I don't know if this happens to everyone, but people started chopping my name off the poem and continuing to share it. And then this one woman, I sort of, my job became like asking people to not do that. It was so boring. And you sort of think, shall I just let it go? Does it matter? And then you think, well, yes, it does, because I would never do that to someone else. I want to like credit people for their work. And one woman said to me, because I asked her to remove it and she didn't, and then I reported her to Instagram, and they suspended her account for 24 hours, and she was furious. And she said, this is my work through it's all through Instagram, and how could you do this? And why does it even matter? Isn't it about your words being shared? Why does it matter that your name's attached to them? And I was like, well, we could say that about a fucking Picasso painting, couldn't we? As long as it's out there.
The audacity for her to be furious at you.
I know.
Because that's her work. It's like, and this is my work.
Exactly. I know. It was really, it was interesting. It's interesting when something like that happens. It had never happened before to me. I'd never had anything go viral. So then... then I self-published a book off the back of that, I think, which was quite exciting. And then I just carried on writing poetry, and I set up a separate poetry account to my main Instagram account, because I don't know why. I guess I felt like my main Instagram account, which is just my name, Annie Ridout, was more about kind of journalism and books, and poetry felt quite separate to that. And then on that poetry account, I wrote just one morning. I dropped my kids at school, and then on my walk home, it's like 5-minute walk home, I just was sort of dictating into my phone these thoughts about like what I want, and how everything's very conflicting. Like I want to be alone and have this peace, and I want to be able to write, but I also want to like constantly be with my children and give them everything, and but put all my energy into both myself and my children and my life and their life and creativity and all these different things. And then I just screenshotted it and shared it on my poetry account without much thought. And then that one went viral, and Paloma Faith picked it up, and Busy Phillips, who like very sweet and that supports my poetry, the Hollywood actress and activist, and a few other people, and lots of just lovely people just kept sharing it around. And that was like one of those. It's interesting because I have a course on an online course on sort of how to build a brand on Instagram, and I'm just in the process of launching a new marketing program called Rise. And what I'm teaching is that you can't share content with the intention of it going viral. You have to just share the content which is like true to you and your feelings about things. You can't be controversial for the sake of being controversial. It has to be that you genuinely have that belief, and you feel you have to get it out there, and then that's and you just can't plan it. You'll never know what is going to capture people's attention, and I don't think it's worth focusing your attention on that aspect of it.
Yeah, I was thinking this as you were talking about it. I was thinking that one of the things that I think really appeals to me about your work, and I think appeals to a lot of people, and it's often why it strikes such a chord, is that you are so honest. You're so clear and honest, and I see it as well in your approach to, for example, like marketing and running a business, and there's all of these like marketing kind of ideas, like the podcast episode I was listening this morning about the funnel. There is no funnel. I am the funnel, and I was thinking that, and that's what I think makes you so special, and why people really do keep on sharing your poetry and do keep on sharing your words, is because I don't feel like you're coming at it from a brand perspective at all. It's like, this is me as a person, and these are the things that I want, and a lot of them are contradictory and conflicting, but they're all there, and it's not straightforward, but it's all truthful, and we're all like that. But I think so many of us feel that that isn't okay, and we need to be fitting ourselves, and like the whole thing of like a niche, like we need to be one thing. It's like, well, you know what, to be honest, a lot of the time having lots of different things is what makes us interesting, having conflicting thoughts, and that's what makes our work richer, and to be able to be honest.
Sorry. What is hard is to work out like how to connect, because we do have stuff to sell. You've got your shop, and I've got courses and programs, and I sometimes sell poetry books, and it's trying to work out how to do that selling. I think the best way to do it is just to rarely sell, and to mostly kind of share ideas, and like you do this so well on Instagram, sharing your like beautiful food that you cook and your home, and it's very like lifestyle, and it's so creative and inspiring. And then when you say I'm part of a retreat, or I'm doing your podcast show, people want it, because so much of what you give is just so inspiring, and they want to buy into you. And I think it feels like you are creating content not with the intention of selling, just with the intention of like getting it out there, and then it naturally inspires people, and then they want to buy, rather than going in with the thought of, right, I've got this shop and I need to promote it, so I'm going to do these ads and do this, that and the other, and then it becomes so boring when it's approached from that side.
And I think I've purely done it this way because I just feel so intensely uncomfortable selling, and it feels so unnatural, and I don't know how to do it. It's like, I'm just going to have to find my own way of doing it, and somehow kind of, and so it's literally, it's like, well, this is how I do it. And, within that, there's space for me to run a business, but and I've had to really just kind of figure that out, because I read all of these kind of like marketing books and all of these tips and stuff, and I was like, ugh, it just doesn't feel right, and it's not, I'm not going to do it well. And some people are great at it, some people really have that knack and it really suits them, but for me it really hasn't suited, so I've just kind of developed my own way. But it's not easy. I guess you have to really kind of figure out what works comfortably for you, and
you have to really believe. And I suppose it's once you start to see people signing up to your course, or joining your retreat, or whatever it is, buying your stuff in your shop, that's when you can see that it's working. It's quite a process, and you have to sort of stay strong and just keep doing it. And then it does work. I think marketing is massively changing, because we're all able to create so much online content and share things so like widely. I think things are really moving in that direction. And people want to buy from you rather than a big corporate brand. It's because they know you.
And I guess that also then it enforces the idea that there is space enough for everybody, because there's going to be somebody, there's going to be somebody that somebody connects with and identifies with over, and you might be selling the same thing or a similar thing, but the other person's personality, approach, just whatever, could just be what you're looking for. So
absolutely.
I prefer that. And so you're still your illustration, that kind of became a thing as part of your poetry as well, illustrating each poem.
It's funny when you said in your illustrations earlier, I was like, oh God, I just had to, because I'm just do not identify as any kind of visual artist. And that's partly because my sister is the visual artist in the family. And then funny enough, she loves writing, is really good at writing, but I'm the writer. And, so there's this feeling we both have, which is completely false. And neither of us, we're both very supportive of our work crossing over. And yet we have this idea. I think within a family, sometimes you are given your role, the thing that you are and that you do. Though I feel a bit awkward about and wouldn't sort of refer to myself as an artist in that sense, I did start drawing. I don't know when, I can't remember what it was. I think it was after I sort of burnt out in the third lockdown, like so many others. It was just one lockdown too many, and I was trying to run my business and sort of made a bad business decision, and sales plummeted that month, and I really panicked because we were all living off that one business, and we couldn't, it felt like we couldn't afford to have one bad month. I now know that you absolutely can have one bad month and it can pick up again, but I just wasn't in the headspace to deal with failure. And so then my book came out, and we didn't get to have a launch because everything we were in lockdown. And so it just all became a bit overwhelming, and I stepped away from the business, and I started I think I just got out a pen and started drawing, and then quite enjoyed it. And then Rich, my husband, is so sweet about drawing, because he thinks he's really shit, and because he thinks I'm slightly better than him. He's always just like slightly in awe of my drawings, which is like embarrassing to say out loud. But he'll say, wow, like I'll draw a jam jar, as I'm saying, he'll say, wow, that's such a good picture. And then I was like, oh, that's so nice to get praise for something which I just don't feel that I can do. But then I started doing, I've done drawing over the years. I remember going to Paris on my own when I was about 19 or 20, and I took a book that my sister had given me which said Poésie on the front, so it's for my poetry, but I took a pen and I was drawing people in the parks in Paris, and I loved it. And but then probably stepped away from it because I thought it wasn't my place, had imposter syndrome. And so, but then I got back into it, and then I got an iPad and started drawing on that and sharing them a bit online, and people were quite nice about it. Yeah. But I've sort of, it's quite
hard.
You
have a very, very clear style. And I think, that's something that so many artists or illustrators really have to work to find, but it's so clearly yours, and they're very characterful and I hate the word quirky, but I guess you wouldn't describe them as like this kind of like detailed realistic like realism style. It's very much like you're telling a story, and you can see the story in your lines and the character. So I think and that's what essentially what it's about, sharing ideas and stories. And I think there's a rawness to them that I really enjoy, I guess.
That's nice. No, I think, but that's I think an example of I really like the process, and I sometimes find it hard and get a bit frustrated. But then my daughter, when she is such a little artist and loves creating stuff, like she's prolific in a way that I just never was. And she will see my drawing, and because she's young, she's like 8 years old, she's still learning, and I'm like one step ahead of her with my drawing, and she'll get really frustrated and say, we'll draw the same thing. I'll start drawing something, she'll sit down, start drawing it, and then she'll say, well, yours is better than mine, scrunch hers up and throw it on the floor, and get really frustrated. And I'll say to her, you've got to keep practicing. Like, often this isn't the first go I've had at doing it, and I have been doing drawings over the year, like for years. I've study art at school, and doing it in my own time. And I guess again it's that thing of you've got to keep going so that you improve. But the other side of it is that because I don't see myself as a visual artist, I don't really care if people think it's shit. Whereas with my writing, if I'm not sure if it's good enough, then I won't share it. But with my drawings, I think, well, so what? It's not what I do. I just enjoy doing it, and I'm going to put it up here because it will make the writing look slightly more interesting, because writing looks boring just on its own online.
It accompanies really well, because you self-published your first poetry book, didn't you?
I did, yes. I wrote one called 29, which was the age I was when I had my first baby, and it's 29 poems on motherhood And that one I had like designed properly by my designer friend out in LA, and that one sold out about 300 copies. And then when my poem What I Want went viral, I quickly turned it into a print and sold a load of prints. And then I self-published another book, and I just designed it all myself on Canva, and it was all just very black and white and quite simple. And I illustrated the front cover of that one, which was called Woman. And then I did one called Mother. So one was sort of feminist poems and the other one motherhood poems. And I was sort of selling them, and I did a market stall when I moved to Somerset. And that went quite well, and it was quite fun. But I set myself this challenge when I moved from London to Somerset, that I was like, I just want to be an artist. I'm going to just we moved in December, and I think I said in like January, February, I said, I'm just going to be a poet until September, and I'm going to make it work. So I applied for an Arts Council grant, and I started showing more poetry online and was selling my prints and my books. But it was quite laborious. And in my first week of deciding to be a poet, I made £900. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I can really comfortably live off £900 a week. But then, of course, it's not every week that I make £900, and it took so much like energy. And I didn't want to be having to like hustle and push people to buy my poetry, because that's the thing that I just love doing and kind of sharing and giving away. And so while it was a really nice thing to self-publish the books, and I did make money on all of them, and from the prints, I basically realized in time what I needed to do was run my business, the Robora, where I'm selling sort of courses and programs, and the price point is much higher. And I'm giving a lot, like I'm doing a lot of coaching now within the programs I'm running. But that's my kind of job, and then the poetry is just the thing I just do for the love of it, and I just do it when I want, and there's no pressure to earn any money from it. And it's just so freeing, because I found I stopped wanting to write poetry, and if I was writing it, I was like, is this something that people are interested in buying as a print? And it just loses its soul. And so I stopped selling poetry, closed my shop, that online shop, and went back to the Robora, and now I'm finding I'm writing loads of poetry again and really enjoying it.
So true. As soon as you monetize something, a creative skill, I really understand that. But this leads on very perfectly into what I was going to ask you about next, about was the Robora and all the courses, but also the membership program that you're launching. Yes,
so it's not quite a membership. I've toyed with the idea of doing a membership. So the Robora is basically, it started off as sort of online business courses, teaching people how to get their press coverage, how to do their NPR, how to launch an online business, and how to launch an online course. And that one really took off in the pandemic when everyone was shifting their work online. And so that's what we were doing. And then I trained to be a coach. And so I started creating courses that had more of a kind of life coaching focus, helping you to work out what you want to do and what will feel fulfilling and how to do it, and sort of how to be more productive and to manage your time better. And so they were just kind of standalone courses. But then a month ago, I launched a coaching program called Revive. And it was to help women who, like me, had felt burnt out by the pandemic and just needed to find themselves again. And it's just straight coaching. There's no business. A lot of the women on it are running their own businesses. And we talk about that. It's all email coaching. So they can just email me whenever they want. They get access to a video workshop each week, which has a quite simple coaching exercise. And it's about giving them the space to think about themselves and what they want, not what their kids want or their partners or friends or society. It's all about them. And it's worked really well. And I love running it. And I love getting these long emails and kind of picking out the points that I think we should explore more, and asking questions and going back. I love running it. And so then I decided to launch another one called Rise, which is kind of the next step up, and it's about how to rise, and it's a marketing program all about designing a marketing strategy that will work for you in the time that you have, for your personality, and there's no rules, there's no you have to do funnels or webinars. It's very much what part of like marketing do you love? Do you love creating images for Instagram or reels, or writing emails, or a mixture of all of these things? And then together we'll work out how each woman should do her marketing going forward in a way that feels really aligned to her and her values. So this is the program I'm working on. And what I've often thought about doing a membership, because it would be really nice to have this kind of monthly income from a membership. But I need to have shorter term things, programs that I'm running, because I never know what might come up on the writing side. Like if I get a book deal, which hopefully will happen soon, I'll need to take some time to do that. So I just won't run a program, and I'll focus on that, and then I'll go back to the Robora again. So I've sort of set it up so that it's really flexible, and once a program is complete, I stop work on it unless I launch another one.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, just I guess it's the juggle, isn't it, and allowing the space for the flexibility, because I guess with a membership then there needs to be consistency.
Exactly. And then I feel like I would just panic if I got a book deal or had an idea for something I wanted to self-publish. I'd think, well, I can't, because the focus of my work is the membership, and I don't have time to add anything else on top. So and I've been speaking to a lot of women about this, about women who do like freelancers who do client work, who want to take the summer off or need to take the summer off to be with their children. And so that you can have clients in the diary for so many weeks or months, and then maybe term time, and then holidays you have off, or everyone manages it differently, but it's just nice to have that flexibility.
No, it's key. I know the school holidays are definitely looming for me.
What will you do?
Juggle. We will just juggle it and wake up very early and work, and stay up late and work. I'm not as good as staying up late actually anymore. It has to be early, like 4 a.m. or 4:30 a.m. And while it's light, it's not so hard, and I tend to get a lot done in 3 hours. So and then it kind of it frees it up. As long as I'm in bed early enough, then it's fine. But we don't have family near or anything, and we can't afford to pay for childcare for both of them throughout the holidays. So it is just juggling. But then I guess I'm fortunate in that I can do that. I don't have to be somewhere 9 till 5. I can work round, and John's the same. But it's tricky. It's tricky. Every single year the summer comes around, I'm like, how do people do this?
I know. I was gonna take off the summer, and Rich was gonna work, and then I decided I want to work too, and I want to properly work, and so my program will be running through the summer, so I have to be working because people are signing up already. And so I've got getting a nanny for the month of August from 10 till 3, which are my like office hours through August. But it will be expensive.
I know it's really hard. And you've moved to Somerset from London, haven't you? How are you finding it?
It's great. We also don't have family. Well, actually, Rich's family are in Somerset, but we don't see them that much, and they're not sort of involved in the childcare sense. And my family are all in London: mum, dad, brother, sister. So I see my family a lot. They come and visit a lot, and I go back a lot. But that was the hardest thing about leaving. It's my family, especially as my parents. They're so like active and energetic, but they're also always getting older, as we all are, and so I sometimes panic that when they need me I'll have to go back to London, but what stage will my kids be at, and this kind of stuff. But I'm trying to just not. I'm very much an overthinker, overplanner, want to plan everything for the next 10 years right now, and I'm trying to let go of that and instead enjoy, like, it's so lovely. It's the life we are building in Somerset is exactly what I wanted, which was to be just surrounded by nature and green and fresh air. Which my youngest had developed a kind of asthma. He's been very ill in hospital with respiratory things. And I was told by a consultant it was possibly pollution related. And we lived near a busy road in London. So now we live like backing on to a park and then fields beyond that. And we don't live on a road. We live on like a sort of little dust track thing. And no one drives past our house, and he hasn't been hospitalized since we've been here.
Wow.
Which is amazing. So it's that we moved for them. I remember Rich saying, when I was like really panicked about leaving London, he said, I was listening to this podcast and this guy said, if it's the right thing for the kids, then it's probably the right thing for everyone. Then it's always the right thing for everyone. And I was like, I don't agree, actually, because I need to be happy to be the best mother to my children. Yeah. But then we got here and my two older kids have been really unhappy at school in London for various reasons. And so I'd taken them out and started homeschooling them. And then we got here and one of them wanted to go to school. And so the other sort of followed. And the school they've joined is just so good for them. And I think they sort of think they moved here in the pandemic. There's no pandemic here in Somerset because of the timing. It's like, funnily enough, we moved and got COVID, but we just didn't tell them. So we were all like stuck in this tiny place we were renting for a week. But they are so much happier, and it does matter in that, and their happiness massively contributes to at least not making me feel so panicked all the time.
Oh, it's so lovely to hear that, like you said at the beginning, it's so funny, you are now living in the countryside teaching.
I know,
imparting all of your wisdom and experience.
Yeah,
what a lovely full circle. And there's many more circles to come, I'm sure, but this is just one of them.
It feels nice. Something I found when I first moved, I was doing bits of poetry and like little bits of journalism work, but I wasn't properly working because I was homeschooling and doing all the childcare. And because we bought this wreck of a house that Rich had, it was completely uninhabitable. So Rich had to gut it and sort of do a little bit of work before we could move in. And so I was with the kids all the time, and I found myself, I started to feel quite unconfident because I didn't really know what my work was. And I sort of started to realize how much I link my feelings of self-worth to my career. And when I didn't have one, so I was meeting people and they'd say, what do you do? And I was like, oh, I'm a poet. It's like, what? And they actually, not everyone here is so creative that they were like totally fine with that. And actually, one of the women I met early on the other day, I said something about my business. She was like, I thought you were a poet. You run a business. And it was like she was disappointed, which is quite funny. But when I got back into the Robora and people like started signing up to Revive, and I'm like connecting with these women and talking about business again and coaching again. And I was like, actually, this is what I needed to settle in. I needed to settle into our home, settle the kids at school, and then to settle back into my career, because that it just makes me feel very comfortable to be sort of earning good money and doing proper work, not just like selling the odd book here and there.
I can see that. Wow. Oh, Annie, thank you so much for talking to me. It's been lovely imagining you in your car. I could hear the birds outside actually at some points. It was quite lovely.
There's also some kind of horrible machine van thing that I hope isn't interrupting the sound too much. I've been shutting the door. I'm sweating. It's so hot here. But I didn't want the sound to be all rumbly in the background.
No, not at all. It's been lovely.
I'm glad you could hear the birds.
You can find Annie online at therobora.com and on Instagram with the following accounts: @therobora, @Annie Ridout, @Annie Ridout Poetry. Annie's books Shy and The Freelance Mum are available in all good bookshops. You can also head to the show notes for links. Thank you to Fly Me to the Bloom for sponsoring this episode, and thank you for listening to On the Irregular. Please make sure you review and subscribe as it helps other listeners find us.